What if I told you that 2,000 years ago, ancient Rome created a financial system that looked startlingly modern? They had advanced banking, credit, and even complex corporate investments. With these tools, they built the most powerful economic engine the world had ever seen. But what if I told you that very system had a fatal flaw, a hidden self-destruct button that would trigger hyperinflation, collapse, and help plunge the world into a dark age? This is the story of how Rome's greatest financial innovations became its ultimate undoing, and it carries a chilling warning we might be ignoring today. We're often told Rome fell because of barbarians at the gates, but the truth is far more complex and a lot more familiar. The real enemy wasn't just outside the walls. It was already inside the system, an enemy Rome itself created, nurtured, and then lost control of, an enemy born from its own financial genius. To understand how it all went wrong, you first have to appreciate how spectacularly right they got it. At its peak, the Roman Empire wasn't just a military superpower, it was an economic one, and the beating heart of that economy was a financial system so sophisticated, it's honestly mind-boggling. Forget the old stereotype of simple bartering. In the middle of the bustling Roman forum stood rows of banking shops, the tabernae argentaria. Here, professional bankers called argentarii, or silvermen, did business that would look eerily familiar today. These guys weren't just money changers, though that was a crucial service in a sprawling empire. They were the foundation of a society built on credit. While banking and credit weren't entirely new with roots in ancient Greece and the Near East, the Romans took these ideas and scaled them up with incredible legal and structural rigor. A Roman could entrust their fortune to an argentarius who kept meticulous records, a daily log called an adversarium, and a customer ledger known as the Codex Rationae Mensae. These acted just like our bank statements, and were so trusted they could be used as legally binding evidence in court. This created an auditable trail, a principle of accountability that's the bedrock of any modern financial system. Their services mirror our own. You could make a payment through your bank or a transaction, called a per mensum, which was the ancient version of a wire transfer. Need a loan? The argentarii offered them, at interest rates that usually hovered around 1% a month. They understood that money wasn't just something to sit on, it was capital that could be put to work. But they went further, developing clever credit tools to fuel commerce. One of the most remarkable was the receptum argentarius. This was a formal guarantee where a banker would back a client's debt to a third party. If the client defaulted, the banker was on the hook to pay. Think about it. It is a financial guarantee that lets two people do business, even if they do unfully trust each other, because they both trust the bank in the middle. This innovation supercharged trade by taking a lot of the risk out of the equation, and the Romans understood risk. To protect their depositors, banking associations, the societas argentaria, adopted a policy of joint, unlimited liability. This meant if one bank failed, every single member of the association was personally on the hook for all the deposits. It was a powerful incentive for self-regulation because one person's shady dealings could bankrupt everyone. The social pressure was immense. In fact, the term for bankruptcy foro sedere literally meant to flee the forum. A respectable businessman had a duty to be present and solvent. Running away was an admission of guilt, a social stain far worse than most legal penalties. This wasn't primitive finance. It was a complex, trust-based system of capital management that allowed an empire to thrive. So, with this banking system in place, the Romans built the framework for a truly globalized economy. They had to answer a huge question: how do you fund massive trade networks, colossal building projects, and a giant military across an empire of millions? Their answer was brilliant. First, they standardized money. We take it for granted, but a uniform currency was revolutionary. You had the gold aureus for huge deals, the silver denarius as the workhorse of the economy, and bronze and copper coins for daily life. For centuries, the value of the denarius was tied to its actual silver content, creating a foundation of trust. A senator in Rome, a merchant in Alexandria, and a soldier in Britain were all on the same page, economically speaking. It greased the wheels of commerce from Syria to Spain. Building on that, they developed structures that look a lot like modern corporations, which they called societas. These were partnerships where investors could pool their money for ventures too big or risky for one person. The most famous were the publicani, or public contractors. The knightly class, the equites, formed these societats to bid on huge government contracts, like collecting taxes in an entire province. Investors bought shares and shared in the profits or losses, basically privatizing state functions and distributing risk. But maybe their most ingenious financial tool was born from their greatest risk, the sea. Maritime trade was the empire's lifeblood, but it was incredibly dangerous. So, they created the bottomry loan, a kind of proto-insurance. A lender would finance a merchant's voyage. If the ship was lost at sea, the debt was completely forgiven. The lender ate the loss, but if the voyage succeeded, the lender got their money back plus very high interest. This brilliant system moved the risk from the merchant to the capitalist, unlocking vast amounts of money for trade. They tied it all together with a system of international banking. A merchant in Spain could deposit money with his local banker, who would then send a letter and ancient credit note to a partner bank in Athens. The merchant could then travel to Athens and withdraw the money there. This eliminated the danger of carrying chests of gold across pirate-infested seas. It let wealth flow safely and seamlessly across the known world, creating a level of economic integration that wouldn't be seen again for over 1,000 years. It was a finely tuned economic machine. Professional banking, legal accountability, standardized currency, corporate structures, and international transfers. So what happened? With a system this smart, this robust, how did it all go so wrong? The answer begins not with a collapse, but with a crisis. A dress rehearsal that exposed the first crack in the foundation. In the year 33 AD, under the Emperor Tiberius, Rome experienced what many consider history's first recorded government bailout. It all started when Tiberius decided to enforce an old law requiring wealthy senators to invest 2/3 of their money in Italian land. The law was meant to keep capital from leaving the heart of the empire, but officials soon made a horrifying discovery. Pretty much the entire Senate was breaking the law. Prosecuting the whole ruling class was not an option, so Tiberius gave them 18 months to sort it out. This act of mercy accidentally lit the fuse on an economic bomb. Panicked, senators and their creditors all rushed to do the same thing, call in their loans to get cash to buy land. The effect was instant and catastrophic. A massive credit crunch seized the economy. Money just seemed to vanish. Debtors who couldn't pay had their property seized and auctioned off. But with everyone selling and no one buying, land prices collapsed. Banks, terrified of defaults, stopped lending. The most respected men in Rome were facing bankruptcy. The engine had stalled. Seeing that the whole system was about to implode, Tiberius did something unprecedented. He took 100 million sesterces, a massive sum from the imperial treasury, and injected it straight into the economy. He set up a commission to give out interest-free 3-year loans to struggling debtors, using land as collateral. And it worked. Confidence returned. Credit started flowing again. The panic was over. A real estate crisis led to a credit freeze that threatened to take down the whole system, which was saved only by a massive government injection of liquidity. Sound familiar? It's an almost perfect parallel to the 2008 financial crisis. But here's the crucial difference. Tiberius's bailout worked because he used real money from a full treasury. He solved a liquidity crisis with actual liquidity. This success, however, masked a deeper problem. The empire's expenses, especially the military, were always growing, while its income from conquest and taxes was starting to flatten. When future emperors couldn't afford to inject real money, they made a fateful choice. They decided to just create it. This was the fatal flaw, the self-destruct mechanism. When faced with runaway expenses and stagnant income, later emperors, especially in the 3rd century AD, turned to a seemingly magical solution: currency debasement. The logic was simple. If you don't have enough silver to mint the coins you need to pay the army, why not just use less silver in each coin? The denarius, which had been nearly pure silver for centuries, began its slow death. Emperors started mixing in cheaper metals. At first, it was a small change, from 95% silver to 90%. But once that line was crossed, there was no going back. By the time of Marcus Aurelius, the denarius was around 75% silver. Less than a century later, its replacement, the antoninus, was down to just 5% silver, basically a bronze coin with a thin silver wash, pretending to be money. This wasn't just a policy change, it was a hidden tax on every person in the empire. The government was paying its bills with money it knew was fake, and people noticed. A merchant would quickly realize the new coins he was getting had less silver than the old ones. So, he'd demand more of the new coins to make up the difference. That is, the birth of inflation. Soon, it spiraled into hyperinflation. As the government pumped more and more worthless coins into the economy, prices for everything shot through the roof. Savings were wiped out. A lifetime of work could become worthless in months. Trust, the invisible glue that held the entire Roman financial system together, evaporated. Trust in the currency, trust in the markets, trust in the state itself. The sophisticated economic machine ground to a halt. Trade broke down. Why would a merchant in Egypt ship grain to Rome for coins that would be worthless by the time he spent them? The economy reverted to primitive barter, shattering the interconnected world Rome had built. The Emperor Diocletian grew desperate and issued his famous edict on maximum prices, setting legal price caps on over 1,000 goods. The result was predictable. Merchants either hoarded their goods, sold them on the black market, or stopped producing them. The edict only made the shortages worse. The great banks of the Forum disappeared. Why deposit your money when the money itself was meaningless? By the 4th century, the advanced system of the argentarii was a distant memory. Organized banking essentially vanished from Western Europe for hundreds of years. The fall of Rome was a complex event with many causes: military, political, and social, but the financial rot from within was a massive contributor. The barbarians didn't knock down the gates of a thriving empire. They pushed on a hollowed-out structure that was already collapsing from the inside. The story of Rome is a powerful lesson. They took financial tools to a whole new level, building a system on principles of trust, accountability, and stable value. And then, under pressure, they threw those principles away. They chose a short-term fix to pay their bills, systematically destroying the value of their money and breaking the trust of their people. The very financial ingenuity that fueled their rise became a key ingredient in their fall. So we're left with a deeply unsettling question. As we look at our own world, with global economies built on complex credit and currencies backed by little more than faith, with government debts reaching astronomical levels and money being created on a scale Rome could have never imagined, we have to ask, is our financial system built on that same Roman flaw? And are we ignoring the same warnings that echoed through the Forum 2,000 years ago? If you found this look into history's hidden financial lessons interesting, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell for more deep dives into the forces that shape our world. Now I want to hear from you in the comments. What other historical event had a hidden economic story? Thanks for watching.